Welcome to episode 61 of Marathon Talk, powered by Abbott World Marathon Majors. This is our first show of 2025 and we've got plenty to dig into. Boston and London have both revealed their elite fields for their 2025 races, and they include a galaxy of marathon running stars across both races. Not to be outdone though, we'll hear how Deena has been getting on in her 100 Days of Discipline challenge, and unbelievably, kicking off 2025, we interview former women's world marathon world record holder and now 6-star hopeful Paula Radcliffe on her marathon comeback. Right, let's go. Deena, how you doing?
Well, gosh, I got nervous with that intro, Martin, because I was hoping you wouldn't check in on me with my 100 Days of Discipline challenge. Because I will explain how it's not going so great. And I chuckled when you said former world record holder in the marathon and 6-star hopeful. Like a lot of people that listen to this show have already completed their 6 stars, or they're going for round 2 or 3 of their 6-star journey. And here we're going to talk to Paula, who is still going for hers. But it's great to see. Yeah, it's great to see she's lacing her shoes back up. So I can't wait to hear from her.
Do you know, it's not every year that it's not like, what is it, 22 years? 22 years? 20 years, actually, post. Did Paula run her first world record in 2003? I think so. Or was it 2005?
2003, and then she lowered it in 2006.
There we go. So it's 22 years since her world record. It doesn't seem that long. It's going to be really interesting to hear what Paula has to say later on in the show about her comeback.
And it's not like she's been out of the sport. She still shows up at a lot of the events. So this past weekend, she was in Dubai commentating for the Dubai Marathon. So, I mean, I've sat next to her in Chicago and New York, and she's really done a good job at staying in the sport and keeping younger generations inspired with camps and clinics that she puts on. So it's great that she continues in such a big way.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing more about her running London this year. We'll let her speak later on in the show. So come on, Deena, let's start off. It's the first show of 2025. Did you have a lovely Christmas and New Year? What did you get up to?
It was great. My husband Andrew's been under the weather for a little more than a month, but we did the best we could through the holidays, still hosting family, friends, and teammates. So it was a lovely Christmas, a white Christmas. We got treated with a white Christmas, so it was really beautiful here in the mountains. And really, when you have kids, Martin, Christmas is all about making it magical for them. So it was a really fun time.
Good. And you've been skiing?
Yeah, well, not me. I mean, I'm the person that finds a way to the ski venue, snow or shine. So sometimes it takes bribing some people along the sides to let me get into those venues that are tucked into valleys far back. But my daughter Piper has been in ski competitions the last 2 weekends. So the first 2 weekends of the year have been driving her and her teammates to Tahoe. And it's those things where you have to food prep ahead of time so that they're just fed the whole day. And I look like a Sherpa on the mountainside with a backpack full of treats and snacks and hot cocoa. But it has been such a joy to watch them. I just love watching the kids thrive in what they do. So Absolutely. It was a fun couple weeks, but busy, And I think that's where my 100 Days of Discipline have really unraveled and fallen apart, is because we're waking up early in the morning and leaving here and driving in a snowstorm to get on the mountain somewhere else and hold all of their things while they preview the venue. And I just didn't have time to run when those weekends showed up. So the first two weekends of the year, I was 50 days of discipline into it. So I got to halfway. Everything else is holding together, but on 2 weekends I couldn't get my runs in.
Where is your sense of commitment?
I know. I should have like had a helicopter drop ship me a treadmill on the mountain so I could get my run in, watch the kids. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes when that happens, so what's your default? So, and this is really important for people, you know, in starting marathon training programs, maybe, you know, because a marathon training program's a lot like 100 days of discipline. Okay. And of course there's fluctuations in that discipline, right? And there's different responses to when that discipline wobbles. Mm-hmm. You know, so some people are, you know, they have a little discipline wobble and they don't do a planned run and they're sort of all right about it. And other people, they have that same wobble and they're not all right about it.
Yeah.
And everything sort of comes crashing round. Are you able to seamlessly pick back up again? Or once you like fall off the wagon, are you off?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because to me, I give myself a little bit of grace and say, you know, I'm doing the best I can on a day like this, and I get right back into it when the next daybreak comes. Okay. So I don't just throw my hands up and say that's it, I'm done. You know, now I could chug a bottle of wine and sit on the couch and eat my potato chips and not have my daily mantras to keep me going. No, I'm still, everything else stayed true, but I just didn't have enough hours in my day to take care of all these kids and travel.
Well, that's all right. You got to prioritize differently sometimes.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the art of flexing, isn't it? When you're sticking to something, there's an art of flexing. And when you're juggling priorities. You know,
right.
I'm not making excuses, by the way, for you.
And I think that's what I was also saying is like, I'm not going to say at the end of the 100 days that I was successful, but I still feel like I need to keep going, keep doing
here's the thing.
The right thing.
I think that when you adapt and when, you know, you are flexible to something and it is a sustained period of effort, that is successful.
Right.
So I think it's a misperception when people start a journey, of which this is, that success has to look like what you thought it would look like when you set out on that journey. So it's still a successful journey despite, you know, those barriers, those challenges, those shifting in priorities. So let's not, I mean, I'm sure we'll have this discussion again, but it's not successful. It's just different.
Right. And it'll be the same if you're training for a marathon and you miss a long run, that really important long run. Like, don't just throw up your hands and say you're not ready for that marathon. Like, work in the miles when you can safely do it without overdoing it. So there's a lot to learn in that decision making, but a lot of it is just giving yourself the grace that you're juggling a lot of hats and do the next right thing. And so
that makes me feel good.
Good. So tell me about your Christmas and New Year and what you've been up to.
We had a good time. We had a great time over Christmas. We had a very family-focused break. We went away, actually, for Christmas. Had a lovely time. We went to Snowdonia across after the Christmas into the New Year. And all of us did. My Christmas present to the family was all of us doing the fastest zip wire in the world. Now, given that my wife... Yes, and I didn't tell anyone. So you go, all the kids and Liz is really afraid of heights. So I booked the fastest zip wire in the world, which goes over 100 miles an hour for
This is
2
in
kilometers.
Snowdonia. This is where it's located?
Yeah. And the kids sort of got really excited and Liz just looked at me with like this sort of gaping face going, you're asking me to do what? And not only did I not tell her, because it was a lovely Christmas present, but we went on the day after Boxing Day. So she really had no time to think about it, which is the best way with these things. So we all went, threw ourselves down a mountain on a tiny wire.
Did you go first?
No, of course not. I made the kids go first.
Oh, okay.
It was great. It was such fun. Yeah, it was really good fun thing to do with the kids and Liz, and they all did it, and they all felt, brilliant afterwards.
Can you be honest and let all of us know how Liz thought of it afterwards? Did
I was
she
a bit,
like wail and laugh and sing, or was
her and Sonny both screamed all the way down, which was great. But she, she did enjoy it afterwards because it's like facing a fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
And she did that really well.
She
and
got
also
an adrenaline rush.
Yeah, all of us doing something together like that as a family was really good. It's also in such a beautiful part of the world. Snowdonia is so lovely, and so I was able to get some mountain running in and disappear off for a few days, not the entire day, but have some nice running in the mountains, and we just walked with the kids, and we had dark skies and remote kind of fun stuff together, which was really lovely. And
That
I've also
sounds so great.
made a little promise to myself to kick off January with a little bit more discipline in the light of your courageous commitment, or lack of, Deena. You inspired me to start my own sort of January commitment. So I've been running a little bit more. I did a little bit of a session yesterday, just gently easing myself back into a controlled workout.
And your body feels good with asking a little more of it?
Good is dubious because you know what? When you're unfit and you start asking yourself things, a little bit unfit, and you start asking yourself questions, it doesn't feel quite like it should feel, does it? It feels harder and more horrible. So that's sort of where I'm at. Instead of just settling and running along thinking, well, this is fine, I thought, well, I'll try and run a little bit quicker and see how it feels. And of course, it feels horrible, but it's going to for a while. And then it starts feeling easier. So I'm sort of in the horrible bit.
That good horrible where you're like, that was so hard, but you feel rewarded by it?
Well, no, because I'm not really pushing. Yeah, so I do feel a bit, a bit better about not just shuffling along. But I'm trying to not push myself too hard, but harder than I have been. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I've got somewhere to go.
I find in moments like that it's really great to run in the mountains in places you haven't been, to kind of like challenge yourself on hills. So it like feels hard, but you're not comparing it to last year's self or a time before, or the kind of fartlek style running where you're like chasing down a street lamp or a street sign up ahead. It's kind of a foundation,
really, a foundation to, like a preparation phase. If we're talking, where we are in cycles of training, this is like my pre-preparation. I'm kind of getting ready to do stuff with a bit more focus, and I'll do this for 4 weeks, and then that's going to change my foundation of where I feel I'm at, and then I'll reconsider what I do for the next 4 weeks. So I'm starting 2025 with a bit of enthusiasm. Here we go. Anyway, come on. Speaking of enthusiasm, it's pretty exciting. The fields for Boston and London have been announced, and where do we start?
Well, we're going to start with Boston. It's the one of our first Abbott World Marathon majors coming up, and it is so exciting to see these names that they have listed that will be towing the line in Hopkinton later this spring, including Helen O'Beary going for her third win in a row. Last year, she defended her title. People were skeptical, but she won in fine fashion. And Cisse Lima on the men's side is going to try to defend his title this year. So super exciting. In the women's field, aside from defending champion Helen O'Beary, London marathon champion from last year, Yelem Zerf Yuhala, is towing the line. The 2022 New York City marathon champion Sharon Lokedi is towing the line. The current world champion Amane Bariso is towing the line. Marion Gugi Cooper, who we've had on our show before, she has podiumed in Boston before and hungry for that top position, will be there. And former champion, the ageless Edna Kiplagat, will also be there. I was like mind blown that all of these women, I think maybe after an Olympic year, you think like things will settle down and people will reassess their careers. And here we are just lining up the best of the best one more time in Boston.
World champion, New York champion, London 2024 champion, previous Boston winners. Like, that's a loaded field. It doesn't get much better Does it? Or does it? Well, you'll find out in a moment. Pretty impressive for the women. Pretty impressive for the men's as well. Two-time champion Evans Chebet's in the field. John Corrier just won Chicago. Albert Corrier, who's just won New York. And who has won New York, and the men's world champion, Victor Kiplanger. So both men's and women's fields in Boston, pretty loaded.
Yeah, Cisse Lima is going to have a hard time defending his title with a lineup like that, undoubtedly.
Yeah,
so we were in awe when we saw this, the headlines that Boston rolled out, and then we saw the London fields. What on earth?
What? Well, it's a little bit like isn't it? I wonder if the London Marathon kind of elite field, the team that pulled together the elite field. Of course, Hugh Brasher, the race director, and Spencer Barden pulls together some of those elite fields. Or if they sit back like this, Boston, you can release your elite fields if you like, but we shall release the next elite field. Oh dear! Do you remember? Have you ever watched Crocodile Dundee?
Of course.
The film Crocodile Dundee. And he's out in the streets, right? He's out in the streets of, what's his name? Mick Dundee. Mick Dundee's out on the streets, and some guy comes up to try and mug him, doesn't he? And he pulls out this little knife, right? And Mick Dundee then pulls out this kind of huge knife and says, "Call that a knife? This is a knife." That's a bit like London, isn't it?
This is what it made you think of.
Call that an elite field.
Absolutely.
This is an elite field.
Yeah. I mean, I still hadn't gotten over the shock of getting excited about Boston when I saw the women's side. It's world record holder Ruth Chepngetich, that stunning performance in Chicago at the end of last year, up against the Olympic champion, Sifan Hassan, and Olympic silver medalist, former world record holder Tigist Assefa. Three of the fastest marathoners in history will be going head to head to head. And that's not even mentioning the former world record holder in the half marathon, Paris Jepchirchir, and 2021 champion Jocelyn Jepkosgei. So the field there is just astonishing. So this spring is already setting up for more of our like jaw dropping. I feel like anytime we come on after we record after one of these events, we're like, can you believe that? But now all these can you believe it's are coming together to race against each other. Yeah.
I mean, we've said, haven't we, that women's marathon running is very exciting at the moment at this level. And Ruth Chepngetich and Sifan Hassan in the same race, is very exciting. It's the first time back to the TCS London Marathon for Hassan since she won the race in amazing fashion in 2023. That was her debut. And if you remember, we knew, you kind of watched it and thought, well, this is a debut because it seemed so erratic, a really erratic race where, she was stopping to stretch, where she was grabbing drinks bottles at the wrong moment and kind of zigzagging all over the road, but she still produced this incredible finish to take the win. And then, of course, she wins in Paris, having medalled in the 5,000 and the 10,000, and then, sprinting to win gold, after, of course, taking victory in Chicago as well in the Chicago Marathon. She's the only woman in history to win Olympic gold over 5,000, 10,000, and the marathon. She says it feels so special to come back to the TCS London Marathon. This is where I ran my very first marathon, began my journey in this incredible distance. Importantly, she says this: London is also where I learned to be patient, to trust myself, and to keep pushing even when it feels impossible. It's a place where I grew, just not as an athlete, but as a person. What a remarkable quote. Yeah.
And I really admire Sifan Hassan in continuing to set these challenges for herself. Like she says, I can't believe I had this wild idea of trying to medal in all these events in the Olympics, but that's how I get out there and push the limits of my capability. And I really love that the best athletes in the world aren't avoiding each other. They're getting together to really bring out the best in each other. And so I am so excited. Hopefully, as the race gets closer, the athletes are all proving to be in fine form so that they can really, I think they can, we are really setting ourselves up to see an amazing race if we can get the three of the best women to toe that line together. I mean sometimes, you push the limits and you come up a little short with an injury or something like that. So if they can ride that line and continue pushing and showing up healthy and ready, this is going to be the race of a lifetime.
Can you imagine the pacer conversation? I mean, how are they going to get that agreed? Chepngetich, 2:09.56, world record holder. Tigist Assefa, 2:11.53. Sifan Hassan, 2:13.44. And, 4 more women that have run sub 2:17 and 2 more that have run sub 2:20. That's the top 8 field, the top 8, all with sub 2:20 personal bests.
There's not many men that can pace them. You're talking about a very limited amount of men that would be able to pace them. And even if they could, when you talk about the 2:09 barrier that we are now in on the women's side, there's not many men. I mean, we'll talk about the London Marathon men's field right now because it's also astonishing. But we're getting into a territory where if you're a man who can run 2:08, 2:09 pace comfortably, you're probably wanting to run your own race, not pace a bunch of women through theirs.
Well, I mean, perhaps we'll who knows how we'll see that unfold. But it's certainly going to be really exciting. One thing I hope is that everyone's able to make it to the start line and make it in good condition. Because this has the making of a truly historic race, right? But in order to be a truly historic race, all the things have to fall into play, don't they? The weather's got to be right. The athletes have got to arrive on the start line able to compete with each other. It's all well and good talking about the personal bests of the fastest women in history, but actually to get them to the start line all in great shape on the same day to produce, what has the makings of a race like we've never seen before. Because we've got the fastest women ever, and not only the fastest women ever, but also those who are able to produce the goods at championships and who are able to produce the goods at World Marathon Majors. So, that's why it's exciting, because it has this potential mix of all the vital ingredients.
Right. And we're just talking about the top 3 fastest women in history towing the line. There's plenty of talent still there for an upset even, because we saw that in the men's 1500 meters last year at the Paris Olympics when Cole Hawker, it was like the Josh Kerr Ingebrigtsen show, and Cole Hawker came out and ended up Olympic champion. So I think we could have some upsets, because when we look at Paris Jepchirchir, Jocelyn Jepkosgei, Magurtu Alemu, these are 2:16, 2:18 women that can sneak in on a good day. We don't know how everybody prepares. They say they're good and ready, but only race day can unravel in that way when those conditions come together and everybody's fit and ready. So it's just looking to be a memorable spring in the World Marathon Majors.
Memorable indeed. And it's not just in the women's, because, well, in the men's field at London, it's pretty epic as well. Olympic champion Tamarit Tola, defending London champion Alex Manyao, and 2024 New York champion Abdi Nagai.
Yeah, and this all starts to get so intriguing when we just look at the depth, right?
Yeah.
The depth of marathon racing, because it's so exciting. Sebastian Sawe, who ran the fastest time at the 2024 Valencia Marathon, 2:02:05, fastest time of the year, is also in the mix. And Jacob Kiplimo of Uganda is making his debut. He is such a stunning runner to watch that I've kind of been hungry for him to move up to the marathon distance. And here he is on that starting list. I mean, we could talk about upsetting the Olympic champion and New York City Marathon champion and defending champion all in one fell swoop, getting a debut record possibly. I mean, this is just the state of marathoning that we're in right now. But this year in particular is the most excited that I've been seeing these names on paper.
Yeah. I mean, of course, you would think, right, that would be it. You know, you're looking at that and you're going, that is a monumental field. You know,
do you have a mic drop for me? Is that what are you building up to, a mic drop? Are you going to outdo me right now?
Monumental. It's a bit like, call that a knife? Monumental field. But there's one more surprise. And London have also announced that the greatest of all time is going back to London. Eliud Kipchoge will be towing the start line in London in April 2025. Yeah, so Kipchoge towing the start line in London. 2:01:09, the greatest marathoner of all time. Sebastian Sawe, 2:02:05. Timothy Kiplagat, 2:02:55. Three men with personal bests of under 2:03, followed by three men with personal bests of under 2:04, and then a further five men with personal bests under 2:05. So the top 10 all under 2:05 already run. I mean, that is some field, isn't it?
This is all making me hope it is a picture perfect day weather-wise in London, which typically it's great racing weather there. So so the odds are in our favor that we're going to see some great racing. But, you know, just when you think Eliud Kipchoge retired and he's probably on a beach somewhere sipping a drink with an umbrella coming out of it and gaining a few kilos, that's not what he was doing. In my head, that's what he was doing. But in reality, he was probably continuing to train with his training group and thought, you know what? I'm pretty fit right now. Maybe I should come back to this sport. So he was just doing his thing day in and day out, and just decided, you know what? I still got the touch. I'm coming back. Here he is. Well,
yeah, he's won London, of course, 4 times. So he knows London inside out. And, you know, look, I think it's fair to say that with Kipchoge, you know, when the race is set to a race that he likes and he knows, right? And there's a certain amount of predictability about that, we see an increased probability that Kipchoge is going to run well. You know, certainly what we've seen in the last couple of years is with unpredictability and less control and more variables, there's a little bit of wobble, right? And we don't necessarily see Kipchoge produce the kind of runs that historically we've seen him produce. Now, I wonder if that's why he's going back to London. You know, he knows it. He's won it 4 times. Everything about the event is trusted, controlled. You know, it's like the event really respects Kipchoge. Kipchoge really respects the event. Everybody, you know, Kipchoge knows what he's getting. And what we've seen is that he runs best when he knows what he's getting.
Right. That's a really good observation, Martin. It's fascinating and maybe something to learn from, that sometimes there are things outside of our variables, and how do we control as much as we can, but roll and be flexible with the things that we can't. I go back to something Andrew says to a lot of his athletes, like, we train hard every day and we work at this, not so that on a perfect day we reach our goals, but even on days where we're feeling a little like a 10% off, or the odds are stacked against us, that we could still reach our goal. So it is a good reminder as we observe other people's styles that it's really good to have that control, to be type A and leave no stone unturned, but also match that with the flexibility of when things are a little out of our control, that we can rebound and reset and continue to keep our eye on the prize.
And it makes it exciting. Like, both of these fields are exciting fields. Boston is going to warm us up, right? I'm really sorry, Boston. Okay. But
Boston's the warm up.
Boston's a starter. Boston is the appetizer. Okay. London comes thumping in with the main course. Yeah. And this is going to be extraordinary. It's got the makings of just an incredible women's marathon and an incredible men's marathon as well. It's not just the top 10, of course. The field is littered with talent, both in the men's and the women's. It's going to be great to see Eilish McColgan back out there, hopefully, making her marathon debut, assuming she can hold everything together. It's also going to be great to see Emil KRS back out there with Mohammed, of course, 2:06.46 for Emil and 2:07.05 for Mohammed, the kind of top British contenders, I think, in the race, duking it out again. That is, unless Paris Olympic champion Alex Yee, who I've noticed making his marathon debut on the start sheet.
Yeah, I thought that was so funny. Like, Eliud Kipchoge's there and you're like, Alex Yee is running. Like, oh my gosh. Of all the stars of the marathon world, you were like, triathlete, let's pull him out of this mix. And I wonder what his intentions are for running. So I'm going to go out and say, like, maybe we can get him on the show before London.
That would be good. Yeah, that would be great.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
I'm putting it out there in the universe. If anyone listening has a connection, get us Alex Yee. We want to talk to him.
Right, that's about it, isn't it? For amazing start sheet news for this week. It's not all about the fastest finishers, however. There was a really nice touch over in Xiamen, at the Xiamen marathon in China. Because sometimes when you do a marathon and you don't finish, you can feel a bit crappy, can't you? I've DNF'd London, and I can remember that sort of solemn stepping off the course, DNFing. I was about mile 18, thinking, well, that was not my day, and I could have done with something to give me a little pick me up.
A little boost in your morale, for sure, because those are hard decisions to make, to peel off the course. It was not announced before the race, but a little surprise for the runners that didn't get to that finish line. They got a DNF bag, and from one of the sponsors, it said on the front of the bag, "It's okay, come again."
Yeah, great. Isn't that good?
Yeah, and then some swag inside. I think it was like a branded shirt and a hat and a message that translated to the unfinished steps. You may not have passed the finish line, but you've already surpassed your previous self. At every step, you fought against giving up. Every drop of sweat is in the shape of a dream. This is not for proof. It's about the journey in the process. Continue to work hard for your goal in the present and the future. Keep running. What a great message to people that were having a subpar day.
That is, to finish. And you get a DNF bag, because normally, of course, you get your finisher's bag, don't you? And you don't get anything else. Like, if you don't finish, you don't get the finisher's bag. But in this case, if you didn't finish, you got a motivational kind of, hey, it's okay. We're still with you. You can still do this. And that's something I've not seen before. And I really, really liked it. This week on the show, we're joined by somewhat of a marathon running icon. She won London and Chicago in 2002 in a then world record time of 2:17. Then won London again in 2003, setting the long-standing marathon world record of 2:15:25. That same year, she won in Chicago, followed the following year with a win in New York before setting the women's only world record in London in 2005. She might tell me it was in Chicago in 2005.
No, I only did Chicago once.
Oh, there we go, in London in 2005. Now, this year, she's making a comeback of sorts as she plans to toe the line in Tokyo and Boston as part of her way towards achieving an Abbott World Marathon Majors 6-star finish, along with some interesting marathoning from the rest of her family. So welcome to Marathon Talk, Paula Radcliffe.
Thank you very much for that intro, Martin.
So did I make any mistakes?
I only did Chicago once. I didn't do it again in 2003, but that's the only one.
And I love that. I only did Chicago once. I broke a world record. So on to the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. Well, it's good to have you, really good to have you with us. And, it's great because I know that you and Deena have obviously got a bit of a racing history as well. And Deena made a little bit of an alternative comeback, I guess, recently when we ran the New York City Marathon together. So I'm really interested to find out more about, your motivations to kick off, to, toe the lines of Abbott World Marathon Majors again. Kind of, where did that come from?
Well, I think it's always been a bucket list. Kind of that, if you're a marathoner, and you experience how special the camaraderie is in that marathon family, you kind of want to do the 6 stars. And so I had it in the back of my mind. I was nervous because already I'd kind of pushed it a little bit, I guess, in terms of wanting to retire on my terms and run in London that last time in 2015. And so it's taken me a while to get to the point where I'm like, you know what? Maybe my foot can do this and it won't take away from that ability to get out and run every day, which is what I love doing. So it was finding that balance. It was also kind of trying to fit it in around life. And because I do commentate and I love doing that side of it as well with the BBC Athletics team, Tokyo often clashes with indoor champs, whether it's European indoors or world indoors. And it didn't this year. And Boston is the Monday before London rather than the Monday afterwards. So I felt like the stars aligned a little bit. And it was like, okay, it is possible this year. Now I've just got to kind of manage it. And in all honesty, typical me, it was a bit of a stupid year to pick because I have one child doing equivalent of GCSEs brevet this year, going up to lycée next year. And then the other child doing her A-level equivalent, which is the BFI here in France, the Bac Français International. And then she's off to uni. So I'm in about 6 million places at once, but it's a challenge. Wow. And I'm really juggling that. And I'm really trying not to get competitive and not to overthink it and think, and it's really hard when Deena will say, when you're used to putting that amount of training in, I'm kind of looking and think, well, that's a bit pathetic. But I've worked out that if I've got a sweet spot, which I haven't actually been starting a watch or adding any miles up since I retired, but I reckon it's probably not more than 50 miles a week. And I think going over that will jeopardize it. So now I'm kind of flipping from that. I love getting out for a run every day to, right, if I do a long run, I've got to have a day off the next day or at least get on the cross trainer in order to manage it. So I'm really not trying to think about goals of time. I know that when I get to Boston, that one will come in, but I'm kind of hoping that sense will prevail in Tokyo in terms of just being able to enjoy it. Maybe pace some people around to get a time and kind of tick off that one.
So I know a lot of our listeners will relate to trying to juggle super busy schedules with trying to fit in running, but also dealing with an injury. Like you have to pamper your foot a little more than in the past. So where does running fit in? How do you slide it into that daily schedule? I would imagine that it has to be a routine, so in a specific time of day so that you ensure getting it in. Because if I say I'm going to wait till this afternoon, it never gets done.
Yeah, but that is the big difference I think that I do notice. And I guess it's kind of helping me in terms of with our podcast, trying to help the runners go through their build up to a marathon is I'm now getting another view at it. And when you have a full-time job and you have a family, it has to be flexible, and it has to be a lot more listening to your body. And a lot of my job, which is great and I love, involves traveling to different events, different time zones. And so just this last weekend, I was in Dubai commentating on the Dubai Marathon, or I'd got my long run in before I got on the plane, which was smart. And then I get there, struggle through the jet lag. And the one day when I was going to try and do a little bit of a workout, really wasn't feeling it. It felt like it was 3 a.m. to me. So I had to be flexible and kind of move that around. And I'm really finding that kind of that bit of, okay, be flexible, and rather than aim for something each day, let's aim for things that need to tick off in the week. And so long as they get in there somewhere, it kind of is a little bit of doing all of that and just managing it and staying healthy. But a whole appreciation for people who have to organize their life and their work around it. Because you're absolutely right. The later you leave it in the day, it's far, far harder to get out there and do it. But I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I can't jump out of bed and go for a run either. So you've got to kind of walk around and get things moving enough to be able to actually get something out of the run.
Yeah. And how are you coping with the mentality? Because it is a different mentality, right? You kind of intimated at the beginning that, I've got to put these things over here, the competitiveness or the time or you kind of got to put all that over there. Now, I think with, like a little bit of, should we call it wisdom? I mean, older age.
Maturity.
Maturity and wisdom. A little bit of that comes. But, effectively, it's really difficult to take the athlete out of the athlete sometimes, particularly for both of you, have competed at the absolute highest of level. And although you can say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do that, the reality of that mindset shift is still quite a challenge. So how are you really coping? How are you really coping with it? And what are you going to do on race day to kind of settle that?
I think race day will be the easy bit, to be honest. It's controlling it up to that point. And I think you're right. I think maturity and wisdom that comes in a little bit there. Also for me, the battle I did have to get back running in the first place on my foot, I think has really, really helped me. And it actually surprises a lot of people. Like I know Steve Cram that I work with is forever saying to me, I can't believe you don't start your watch and you don't time anything you don't look at things like that. I said, but I don't want to know, because I'm so grateful that I'm actually out there running and enjoy it. And I know that my foot is not efficient. But on the other hand, I also know that getting out and running every day actually keeps it healthier than it probably would be if I wasn't trying to do that. So there's a great balance and a real appreciation for the fact that I can get out and do this. And I guess it helped a couple of years ago in 2023. I was asked to jump into the Berlin Marathon a couple of weeks before, but Nike were putting together pace groups to help people around. And there was a bit of miscommunication because I kind of said, well, I've been at the World Championships. I've not run longer than an hour all summer. I'm really not sure I can go that far. So put me with like the 3:15 group. And so they went, okay. And then I got there and they said, well, you're only supposed to do 10K. And I went, hold on a minute. I'm like, this is what I did all the time. And I'm just going to say to everyone that I've helped to that point, right, you just crack on your own now. It's fine. I'll just let you carry on with that. I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. I want to try and go the whole way. But then because I was trying to juggle kids and Gary was in Chicago, prep in Chicago, he wasn't able to be there. I had to get the flight back home for the kids for school the next day. So they said to me, you can't finish and get off the course. So I ended up I should have come off at 36, 37K. And I ran to that point, and one of the ladies that I was running with really wanted to break that barrier. And I was really trying to keep her through it, eyes focused on my back. So I ran on with her up the road, found another group that were going to get the time that she wanted and kind of got her in with that group, and then turned around and ran back down to the pickup point. So I ended up running 39K or so, I guess, that day. So the best part of a marathon off no specific training whatsoever. And yes, probably slower, but still it was okay and it was comfortable. Yeah. The next day, the only thing that hurt was my foot. And I did struggle to walk the next day and to the airport that night. But the rest of me, I was absolutely amazed at. And it really did. I mean, we talk a lot about the revolution in shoe technology. And as an older runner, I appreciate that side in terms of the recovery between training. But that really did bring it home to me. Okay, it really does help recovery wise in the race. So that was another pointer in terms of me thinking, okay, maybe it is doable, certainly to do the two in the same year and not have any negative effects. So yeah, I'm trying to, like I say, I know it will start to creep in.
Keep a sensible head.
After Tokyo, I think. Once I get through one, then probably in the middle of that, I'll probably go too quick too soon and end up paying the price for it later on. But it's weird, the anxieties, if I think back to my first marathon, and you're kind of, all of the worries then are not the ones, I don't know if this is the same for you, Deena, when you go back to them now. I have no doubt in my mind I can get round and I will be able to finish, because I feel like, particularly as you come into perimenopause or that kind of side of it, sometimes it's the speed and the workouts and the strength workouts where you just think, oh, I really can't do it today. But I can always keep running. So I'm hoping I'll finish without having to stop at any point. And I know it is only more the time rider that will kind of suck me in.
Yeah, I would say that luckily, like 99% of your body thrives in doing what you're about to do, right? Like this is what it craves on a daily basis. And you just have to convince your foot that, that it's good for it as well.
And it will be okay during. It is like most of the time it will be fine during. It will just be because it's such an osteoarthritic joint, it will just be the inflammation and the soreness in the couple of days afterwards. And so long as I don't push that too much, touch wood, it should be fine.
So what would you do in between the Tokyo and Boston to ensure that your foot is recovered and ready to go again?
I think it might be a week of cross training afterwards.
Yeah.
And then afterwards that it should be okay. Again, playing it completely by ear and complete learning experience as I'm doing it. But the other thing I've missed that camaraderie of it and that spirit of the marathon. And you guys got to experience it when you ran New York. And it's almost, whisper it, Deena, but it's almost better than on the elite women, because in there you're so focused on your race, you have to kind of block out a little bit of that. Whereas when you're in the middle of the mass race, you can draw on it. And that is for me what makes the marathon so special and so magic, is that you have 55,000 people in New York, 45,000 in London. I don't know the numbers everywhere else, but you have that many people out there and they're all doing the same thing on the same day. And largely they're going through the same experiences and they're all helping everybody through it. And they are all kind of learning a little bit about themselves in every one, no matter whether you've done 50 or whether you've done 2 or whether it's your first one, you learn a little bit more about your body in each one. And I think that's the bit that I'm really looking forward to.
And Deena, I'm sorry, open apology from me, but you really did experience the other end, because that was actually a really important part of the process, of getting ready for the run and also, doing the run on the day, really wanting to make sure that enjoyment and that connection with all of those different things in the event that you won't have experienced before, because of such high levels of focus that come with that previous life as a marathon runner. So we really tapped into that, Deena. We really did.
I'm thinking like even the small things of like thanking the volunteers for being there. Like you don't get to do that when you're chasing a record or chasing the win. You want to conserve all that energy. And so I'm just thinking of the person that's like in their struggle, plodding along, and they look over, and here comes Paula Radcliffe passing them in the Boston Marathon. Like, someone pinch me.
Pass you. Yeah, that would be even better. They'd be like second glancing, like, what? I hang on a second. As a part of that journey, Paula, you're doing a podcast as well with Chris Thompson. Of course, Chris has an incredible history in running in his own way. How did that come about, and what's the rationale behind doing that podcast with Chris?
Well, I kind of thought about the idea of a podcast last year, and we'd done a couple of trials, and I did one trial with Tomo, and we just clicked. I mean, we've known each other for so long. I mean, since he was a naughty little junior running around on teams and eating all the room snacks and stuff. We've got on really well. And I think we're very similar mentality, but also very different in some ways. Like he will say he wasn't a natural to the marathon. He loved the track and he really struggled to adapt to the marathon training. So I think we kind of bring those two together. We both love the marathon family. And it's a chance to really help people along that journey through to London initially. And we hope then we'll be able to keep the Marathon Run Club going. But it's not just for marathoners. People can just listen and learn other things that we got wrong. I think that's the other good thing. Neither Chris or I are afraid to talk about the things we really messed up, and things that we learned, and able to pass that on to other people. And then we got the backing, and we are doing it with the support of Children with Cancer UK. The London Marathon last year in 2024 broke the Guinness World Record for the single largest amount raised in a one-day event of £73.5 million. And almost 500 runners of those were Children with Cancer UK runners. So given the story and everything that we'd been through with Isla, I was really keen to kind of give back to those runners. So it kind of feels like it's ticking off a lot of boxes for us. We're having fun with it, which is brilliant. We're trying to invite guests on each week, which are a mix. Sometimes a celebrity guest who's run the marathon, and other times experts. And the great thing is we're still learning from those experts as well. And we're really trying to share. And also, I really want it to be a platform that people can email in with questions, and that normal marathon phobias that kind of creep up as you start the thing, where they think, oh my God, I've entered for a marathon. Now what do I do? But also as you get closer to the event, what do I do about planning what I'm going to eat the night before, about what do I do if I'm going to need the toilet in the race, and normal things like that people perhaps think, oh, we can't ask that. We really want it to be, you can ask anything, and we will try. We can't promise we'll solve it, but we can try and answer it.
So you mentioned Isla and her health struggles, and why this podcast and the beneficiaries are so important to you. Do you feel comfortable talking about that?
Yeah.
You talk about your busy schedule. You were just in Dubai. You've got Boston and Tokyo coming up. You're working London, but Isla is also running London. So if you could just speak to it in a big umbrella of just your worlds kind of coming together.
Yeah, and a huge amount of at the same time, admiration for her, and then trepidation and worry as a mom. I'm like, are you really wanting to take this on? And there've been some funny moments in that as well. But I think the upshot of it all is she's a junior ambassador for the charity. Last year, she was with the charity support team, and she was actually looking after Theo, Chris's son, at the finish of the marathon. So it was born out of that. She walked away and she said, you know what, Mum, I really, really want to do it, but I don't want to worry about a time goal. And I don't want people to say, oh, she's Paula Radcliffe's daughter. She's going to run this time. She said, it's just, I love that atmosphere. And she said, I want to be a part of that. I see them finishing and I want to experience that. And I kind of said, well, okay, but so long as you promise that if at any point it's too much, you don't have to do it, and you don't have to push through it, and you need to do a little bit of training. But she'll say things like, well, how hard can it be, Mum? You always say it's just one foot in front of the other. Okay, that's true. But and then the next moment she'll ask me a really simple question like, is it really going to hurt? And I said, well, that depends on how much training you do. But it will at the same time be a really, really special, and I'm really proud of her for taking on this challenge and for being so mature and balanced in the way that she's doing that. Because I mean, I'm already really proud of her for the way that she handled coming through everything that she has done with the cancer and with the treatment, and with having to get simple things back up again, like her memory was massively affected afterwards. So that we've seen huge improvements in the last 2 years, and to the point where she's now turned around as she's getting ready for her exams and said, you know what, I've got a good memory. And we were back a year out of chemo, writing all over her bedroom wall with things that she needed to remember. And by the time you'd be on the second wall, she'd have forgotten what was on the first one, and just trying to find ways around that. So I think the journey that she's been on, and her recognizing that we're the lucky ones and other people aren't so, and what the charity's trying to do is just really raise that awareness and funds and improve the situation for all the children.
Paula, how on earth are you going to hold it together?
I don't know. I mean, in Boston as well, because Children with Cancer UK is actually going global this year. So when we're in Boston, we are going to go to St. Jude's. Isla's doing part of her dissertation study on the American healthcare system and the treatment of children that children go through. So we're going to kind of visit there as well. So I think it's holding it together emotionally, but it's also, in all honesty, giving back what we can do, and for me, giving back to the charity, but also giving back to the sport, because I don't think I would have coped as well without the background in sport and without that sport family and all of the support that we received from all over the world when we were going through that, friends and family as well.
Because there's Paula as the marathon world record holder, Paula as the marathon runner, Paula as but essentially in this context, you're a mum.
Yeah.
You're Isla's mum.
Yeah, and at the same time that she's struggling around London, I'm going to be commentating as well. So that's all going to be up in the air with the tracker going in one corner and trying to do a good job in the other. But yeah, I mean, you wouldn't swap it at all.
Yeah, I'm thinking back, to your mum watching you, and it must have been, you must think, wow, okay, this is kind of putting yourself in the frame of a parent, and your daughter is turning 18 soon. It's amazing. And then, celebrating that by running a marathon, it's like take a little step back and think, wow, this is just going to be brilliant.
It's really cool. I mean, if you take it right back to the beginning, I was inspired to ever want to run in the marathon by watching my dad take part in London in 85 and seeing Ingrid Christensen setting a world record that day. So that's my dad ran, and sadly he's not here anymore. But like Isla said, it's almost like it makes it we're a little bit closer to him, because we're kind of ticking off a third generation of taking part in the London Marathon at least. And who knows, maybe she'll get the bug and go back to running then at uni.
I think we look back at like 2003 being the year of Paula Radcliffe, but this just might be your year. Like everything, all of your worlds are like synchronistically coming together. And I can't think of anything more beautiful than that.
No.
I should have done it at my 50th, shouldn't I, really, just to tick it off that one. But it didn't work out that year.
I think, Paula, that there's that relationship that you have, mother and daughter. You're obviously incredibly proud of Isla, but there's also the nuts and bolts, right, of getting ready for a marathon for you, right, in Boston, and Isla in London, and of course trying to juggle the realities of getting ready for a marathon and all the nerves and apprehension that each of you might have, both of you might have, and you perhaps trying to be mum, and I don't know who's gently guiding Isla around getting ready in terms of what she does, whether that's you or Gary.
If you imagine my level of stubbornness and then even Gary's level of stubbornness, and then you take that up a little bit, then you probably get to where. So it's like you say, it's gentle guidance, and I think the biggest thing is with everything that she's managing this year, it has to be on her time. And I think it's one thing that you hugely learn as a parent. I mean, I'm very passionate that they're active. And that they do sport, but what level they do it to is completely up to them, because one thing that we've all learned from our careers is you have to want to do it, and it has to come from you. It can't be anybody doing it for anybody else. It's doing it for yourself. And I think she's definitely picked up on that. And that's why, she's kind of surprised us all with this statement that she's going to do it. And at the same time, I am kind of saying, you know what, you do at any point, you have to kind of put yourself first and make those decisions that are right for you. But her reasons for doing it, like I say, I'm really proud of those, and I'm inspired by those as well. And just be nice if she gets out and does some training.
I know. I feel like all three of us are parents to teenage girls. So we're learning a lot these days. I feel like we're realizing like how much we don't know as
also
adults.
How much simpler it was for us. Yeah. I think there's that huge admiration of it was much, much simpler. There was no TikTok, there was no Instagram, there was none of that kind of measuring off across countries. It was really just amongst the people that you knew close by, wasn't it? And it's certainly a different world now, and the way that they negotiate that.
Right. And to some extent, I feel like even as an athlete, not comparing your workouts and your races to what everybody else is doing, because it wasn't so easily accessible back then to know. The only time you knew what people were doing is whatever they divulged in the press conference the day before the race. And now you see, you compare yourself to everything everybody is doing, from how fast their mile repeats were to how they spend their leisure time and how they vacation. So I do want to jump ahead to the time that we're in women's marathoning in general, because I wrote down like a little cheat sheet here, because we were there when Naoko Takahashi broke the 2 hour, 20-minute barrier.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal. Like, oh my gosh, someone just broke 2:20. And then Catherine Deriba lowering it. And then you taking more than a minute off of Catherine's record, then lowering that in 2003. 16 years later, we were together in Chicago when Bridget Kosgei broke your record. And we've seen it lowered 2 more times. So
I was in that race in Berlin.
Right. And it really is like you cross the finish line and you're like, what just happened? Like, really? So I just want to get your feel, like, emotionally, like, is it an exciting time? Is it a skeptical time? Is it all of the above? How do you come into watching another performance that just makes you like shake your head in wonder and in awe? How do you feel about that?
I think it's a mix. I think it is a real mix with that. And mixed into that is the fact, and I'm sure you've been asked like 100 million times, what would you have run if you had the shoes? And we can't answer it because we don't know. We just know that we feel better in them now and they help us to run well now. And there is obviously a performance gain from the shoes, and there's a cumulative one as well from training in them over the time. So I think there is that factor there. There is also the psychological factor, and Stefan's talked about it this week when she's talked about that going into London, it kind of, she has to believe that it's possible. And when you see women going out there and doing it, they are demonstrating that it is. So you have to think it is possible. At the same time, the 2:11 already blew my mind, and the 2:9 even more so. So of course there is some kind of part of you saying, well, how on earth? Because all of our memories are based on being out there in old shoes. I know not only the shoes, the nutrition has improved phenomenally, and people don't talk about that so much, but I never used to use gels because I could never agree with gels when we were running, and they weren't that good and they gave you a lot of gastrointestinal problems and things like that. So then I figured, well, how am I going to manage when I'm training on my own for long runs now and I need to take some kind of fuel? So I took one of the new gels, just to kind of put it in the back of my shorts. You can actually chew it without any water, and it really helps, and it doesn't give you stomach problems. And so I feel like there are a lot of factors that have helped to keep this performance moving forward. But at the same time, if we're asked for the most exciting race that we watched marathon race that we watched of last year, we're all going to say Paris, aren't we? Where it wasn't the quickest, but it was just an exciting race. And I think that part of it never goes away. So while you're in awe and admiration of the times that are run, it still is the pure racing and the, oh my goodness, what is going to happen? They're still like barging each other with 100 meters to go. It's that excitement and that a huge admiration for what Sifan Hassan was able to do in terms of 37 hours later coming back and doing that in the marathon. So it's the bigger picture of it. But that marathon course was phenomenal. And a shout out to the organizers who put together the Marathon pour tous as well. I didn't take part in the full distance. I did the 10K. In my defense, I was working in the stadium till 10 o'clock at night. And then I was back there commentating on the marathon the next morning. But the atmosphere was phenomenal, and people got to share in that course, which was brutal, but beautiful and amazing at the same time. And how they ran as quickly as they did blew my mind there. But as I say, the both races, the men's and the women's, were phenomenal races to watch.
Yeah, I think Paula, you make some great points. And I can just think back to 2003, you're running 5-minute miling down the embankment, right? And you're just passing 25 miles, and now someone's finished.
I know. It's crazy.
Going through your head, and if you put yourself back at that point, absolutely gritting it down that last mile, running, unbelievably fast and so much quicker than anybody in history has ever run before. Yet, over a mile has passed, and now, that you'd have been a mile behind. But at the same time, change and progress is a natural part of marathon running. You know, times aren't going to go backwards. They're only going forwards. And if anything, you know, nobody running quicker for 16 years was a surprise too, you know, because progress is a normal part of athlete development. It's an expected part of athlete development.
I do feel if you look at the history of women's marathoning, it was like, I mean, Ingrid held the world record for 13 years. So it is like there's kind of chipping away. There's a group of women that are inspired by each other doing that. And then it feels like there's a jump. And then it's chipping away again. So maybe it does kind of go in that cycle. I mean, on the men's side, I do really feel that the focus was on racing for a long time. And there was a huge fear of going, because of the quality and the depth of it, there was a huge fear of going out too fast and overcooking it. That kind of perhaps held them back for a little while. And then we see when they started really working towards the 2 hours, we saw how quickly it came down. Because I think back to, was it 2002 in London when Khalid Kanuchi set the world record, and he was still locked in battle with Gebrselassie and with Tergat a mile out. So there he was not only trying to win the race, the world record was kind of a bonus. That wasn't the focus of that. It was to win the race. And even when I set the first one in Chicago, the goal was to beat Catherine, who was the existing world record holder at the time. And yes, there was a secondary goal because I knew it was possible having come so close in London. But the first goal was absolutely, I have to get this right, not overcook it. So then you can't really afford in that situation to go out and do what everybody said was so crazy when Ruth did it, and kind of going out in 64 minutes for me just blows every rule out of the water of marathon running. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to be able to survive, but she just proved that actually some people can. Still wouldn't advise most people listening to go out and do that.
That's not your Tokyo. That's not your Tokyo game plan, is it? No, definitely not the Tokyo game.
Definitely not. I'm not sure I could.
So, Deena, you may go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's an interesting analysis to hear like Ingrid Christensen holding the record, the world record for 13 years, and then it gets broken and chipped away at, and then Paula having it for 16 years. And now we're in this era that is getting chipped away. The time is getting chipped away. And so as much as people say, oh, what could you have done in the shoe technology back then? What could you have done? But also, what could you have done if there was just people around you? What if anytime you lined up, you not only had the advancement of shoe technology and nutrition, but also like, I got to beat these girls, where you didn't have that. You were like time trialing in your head.
I did. I mean, it was still a competition out there, and we were still, I feel like we were still a strong group that were racing. So I do think we had that. I do think it's also mentality, individually. And I kind of was one of those people who could push myself anyway if I was on my own. And sometimes it was to my detriment when there were people around me, because I probably would have still just done it anyway. And it was a discussion I remember vividly having with Dave Bedford before 2003, because he was like, well, what if it's windy? You need to have the males there as pacemakers. And I was like, oh no, I still think I can push myself and just be in a women's race and be able to do that. But you're right, that has kind of changed. I mean, Ruth had the male pacemakers all the way through. And that's also another reason where often the men don't go all the way through. So perhaps the men's was slower to come down for that reason. But in our era, that was the key difference. Anybody who was good enough to pace you, even through 10 miles, wanted to be in the race itself, not pacing. So that's kind of changed too. I think the depth of women's marathoning has changed in terms of now there are very, very, very good half marathoners who are really happy to take a women's race through to 30K even, or certainly to 25K. We just didn't have that. I mean, I don't think I had a female pacemaker that went past 5 miles anywhere.
What does that make you think, Paula, about, couple of things to finish us up? This week we saw the 2025 TCS London Marathon Field, Elite Women's Field announced, and it's clearly loaded.
Yeah.
My favourite race of last year was actually, watching Sivan Hassan run London. Of course, like, let's have a think about this year's women's London, because, that has all the ingredients to be a breakthrough race. What do you
I'm
think's
so
gonna happen?
envious that the two of you get to be there and like just see
You have
it
to
and,
just come.
commentate on it unfolding. I'm going to be here like so anxious.
Yeah, no, I do think, but it can also go either way. And like I say, we've seen that lots of times in the past when races are absolutely stacked. Then there's a lot more importance riding on who comes out on top rather than times. So much as they might want the times to be quickly, sometimes it's just as fascinating a race, because there is that watching and that strategy coming into play. So yeah, I think it's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be a phenomenal season to watch all of these marathons unfold in different ways. But seeing those head-to-heads for me are far more. And people talk about the fact that maybe London isn't the quickest. I think Deena and I probably disagree with that. Certainly I do, with the support of the crowd. And I know the course has changed somewhat now from the course that we used to race on. But it's not a slow course. But what they are doing is putting together huge head-to-heads, which are fascinating for us to watch. And yes, there are a lot of things to happen between now and then. And some people might not make it to that start line. Some people may defer over for another year, much as many of the people getting ready are doing as well, and kind of managing that. At the very least, I want to be healthy and on the start line and able to do myself justice. So all of that comes into play. And maybe with the fact that we haven't got a big, we have a World Championships, not until September. We don't have an Olympic Games. So I think that then adds to the athlete's ability to pour a little bit more into it and maybe risk a little bit more in terms of trying to go fast. So all the ingredients are there.
Yeah,
I guess what I'm trying to say is it might mean that we get an equally fascinating race, but not a fast race.
It's really chalking up to be the chance of a lifetime to witness in London. Paula, you have given us all so much to look forward to this spring marathon season. Best of luck in Boston and Tokyo. And I hope Isla has the time of her life in London.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Right, what a show. What a show, Deena. Kicking off 2025 with the release of some incredible marathon fields for our spring Abbott World Marathon Majors. A conversation with the iconic former marathon world record holder, Paula Radcliffe. And, I think that's probably, we can't start the year much better.
That is right. What are you going to be up to in the next couple of weeks, Martin?
I have lots of kids stuff going on. A bit like you, I seem to be, I seem to be busy with family things, but I'm definitely committed to keeping up my running. I've also, Deena, I've stopped eating chocolate. I find that, yes, I have decided that I'm going to quit chocolate. I'm not sure how long it's going to last at the moment. But
why?
It's okay.
Why do you stop eating chocolate? Why do you need to do that?
Allow me to explain.
Yeah.
So I'm one of those people that if I start eating like a chocolate bar, I'll eat it all, regardless of how big the bar is.
You can't just eat a square after dinner or something.
So
okay.
Liz can buy a chocolate bar and it will sit in the fridge for months.
Yeah.
I'll buy a chocolate bar and it will sit in the fridge for minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the only way I can not do it is to not have it. So I'm like, okay, I just won't eat it. And then I don't eat it. And what I find is that once I make the commitment to that, it's then much easier for me to make a more sensible commitment to healthy, nutritious eating.
Oh, wow. So
Much
it's not
easier.
Just about the chocolate. It's about the discipline of not eating the chocolate. It allows you to make more disciplined decisions throughout the day.
And do you know why that is?
Brilliant.
Why I think that is because the response that my body has to chocolate, particularly, high levels of sugar, means that once I start eating those high levels of sugar or chocolate, my body becomes accustomed to and like wants a little bit more. When I stop eating it, chocolate, if I then have a piece of cake or something sweet, I don't like it. It's too sweet, right? So it's like my taste adapts and changes. So that means I don't make those choices anymore.
Wow.
So, it's hard initially because I want to reach for a chocolate bar, and we've had all those post-Christmas chocolates knocking around the house. And I've been like, but I've not cut everything. So I've not gone, I'm not going to eat any sugar or, if we've had some Christmas cake left. I've had a little bit of Christmas cake, but I haven't had any chocolate. So I'm like,
so your dry January is in the form of chocolate.
And also, I'm not, but I am, before we go back to your 97 days of discipline, I am also... I haven't had anything to drink either, so and I don't know. I'll do the rest of January, and then I'll see.
Yeah, so that's great, and it allows you. I feel like when you're disciplined in those ways, it allows you to really immerse in the kids' stuff you have going on and all the other things.
We'll see how it goes. I'm not getting too hooked up on it,
Yeah.
But at the moment, I'm kind of enjoying it. Anyway, how are you? Next week, are we going to be back on it with 100 days of discipline, or are we going to be at 92? What do you think?
No, we're back on. I'll have to extend my number of days of discipline to make up for the couple days I failed. But I do have another trip to Tahoe coming up to take my daughter skiing. So I'm giving myself, I'll try to get it in. But if my day from sun up to sundown is filled with schlepping kids and getting them up on the snow and time, it's okay.
Discipline. Yeah. I think it still counts as discipline to do those things.
Yes. So for all of you,
discipline's important.
Yes. Whether you're continuing to be disciplined in your New Year's resolutions, I hope you are enjoying the run wherever it takes you.